Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. Happy birthday, Julian. Amelia's voice was like a glass of whiskey without ice, smooth but without warmth. She handed me a glass of champagne, her fingertips deliberately avoiding my hand. It was my 40th birthday party at our cottage on Lake Washington. The villa, which sits on 3 acres, was the first piece I designed for Amelia, and every inch of it had been filled with my vision for the future. Outside the glass walls, Seattle's nightscape is like a streaming painting, with the lights of the Space Needle twinkling in the distance, while inside the air is like the sea before a rainstorm, seemingly calm, but actually turbulent. Guests talked in threes and threes, the cream of Seattle's architectural and business community. Everyone had elaborate social masks on their faces and valuable champagne in their hands. But their eyes always drifted unobtrusively to the center of power in the room, my father-in-law, Marcus Thorne, and the figure beside him that I didn't want to see. Marcus Thorne, 65 years old, well kept in shape, his silver hair immaculately combed. He is the founder and helmsman of Thorne Construction Group, a man who built his empire on concrete, steel, and connections. His suits are always tailored, his watches are always Patek Philippe, and the way he looks at people always carries a coldness that assesses assets. I, Julian Vance, am the chief architect of his firm and his son-in-law. I joined the Thorne Group 5 years ago with a stellar architecture degree from MIT and a lot of enthusiasm. Over the past 5 years, I have earned Thorne Group numerous accolades and profits with a landmark green building that has brought this traditional business into a new era. The Emerald Tower in downtown Seattle, Eco Square in Bellevue, and Greenhaven in Tacoma have each created a buzz in the industry. But Marcus always looked at me like he was scrutinizing a tool that didn't belong to him and could get out of control at any moment. "Look who's here." Marcus' booming voice breaks into my thoughts. He enthusiastically put his arm around a man's shoulder and strutted toward us. The man was about 35 years old, about my height, with brown hair combed into an overly greasy back. It's Carter Wells, Amelia's ex-boyfriend from college, a guy who left the company in good standing 3 years ago after losing money on a project. Carter Wells was once the rising star of the Thorne Group, ambitious and nimble. However, he was responsible for the Riverside Apartments project, which cost the company nearly $20 million due to cost control and design flaws. Marcus swept him off his feet unceremoniously at the time and now embraces him like a triumphant hero. "Julian, it's been a long time." Carter offered me his hand, his palm wet and firm as if he was trying to establish something through a handshake. "I hear you're the top man in the Thorne Group now. It's a real sight to behold." His eyes crossed to me and met Amelia's for a second. It was a short second, but it was enough for me to catch the subtlety of it. A tacit understanding I'd never seen before, a heartfelt understanding that only comes between co-conspirators. Amelia's cheeks flushed an unnatural shade of red, and she quickly averted her eyes as she took a sip from her glass. Dom Perignon's bubbles rise in the glass like a secret she's trying to hide. "Carter recently moved back to Seattle for good," she explained, her tone flat as if she were stating a weather report, "and Dad thought he had a lot of experience and wanted to ask him to come back and help out." "Help?" I repeated, my eyes darting between Marcus and Carter. The air smelled of Tom Ford's cologne, Carter's usual perfume, which was uncomfortably strong. Marcus avoided my eyes and turned to pat Carter on the back, a gesture that was overly intimate. "The market is changing, Julian. We need more diverse perspectives." Carter has accumulated a lot of new resources and ideas during his years in Los Angeles. "Yes." Carter took over, his smile carrying an air of aspirational confidence, especially in the areas of project finance and customer relationship management, which I believe can break new ground for the company. I noticed a faint ring mark on the ring finger of his left hand as he spoke, obviously having recently removed his wedding ring. And Amelia, her fingers were trembling slightly as she held the champagne glass. "We have some business matters to talk about as father and daughter," Marcus snapped, looking over at Carter and completely ignoring my presence, "about strategic adjustments for the next quarter." "Carter, why don't you come along? I need to hear what you have to say." The three of them walked towards the terrace, Amelia at the end, and she looked back at me with a look that was so complex it was hard to decipher, a mixture of guilt, determination, and a hint of relief I didn't want to admit. Through the floor-to-ceiling glass, I could see out onto the terrace. The Seattle night breeze blew Amelia's blonde hair, and she wore the Valentino evening gown I'd given her, the dark green silk outlining her still fine figure. Marcus was rattling off something, gesturing exaggeratedly and occasionally pointing to the city skyline in the distance. Carter stood next to Amelia, keeping just the right distance, not too close to draw suspicion, not too far away to seem rusty. But I saw it. As Marcus turned to point toward the distant construction site, Carter's hand lightly touched Amelia's arm, and she didn't duck. That moment was short, maybe half a second, but it was enough for a trained observer. Details like these have been accumulating for months. Amelia started to work a lot of overtime, but her assistant Emma told me privately that Amelia often left the office in the afternoon. Her cell phone is never far away, even in the shower, and she takes it into the bathroom with her. She changed her password, reasoning that the company's financial information needed a higher level of protection. Our conversations became short and formulaic, like two shared roommates rather than a couple. As for physical intimacy, the last time was 3 months ago. I tell myself it's just a period of marital exhaustion. After all, I'd been working all night long and practically living in the office for the Skyline project. But tonight, looking at the 3 men on the terrace, I know the truth is far harsher than I ever imagined. My cell phone vibrated in my tuxedo pocket. I take out my cell phone, and it's an encrypted message with L as the sender. They did it. All evidence has been secured. Everything you want is on the server. I deleted the message, put my phone back in my pocket, and took a deep breath. The air was a mixture of the sourness of champagne, the bitterness of cigars, and the fishy sweetness of betrayal. Tonight, I'm the husband in the dark, a wretch about to be abandoned. I have to play the part, at least for a few more hours. The party went on. Councilmember Thompson came up to me to congratulate me and talk about how the Emerald Tower has changed the Seattle skyline. Wilson, a renowned developer, approached me to discuss his new project, suggesting that he could offer very attractive terms if I would go independent at. There were also a couple of architectural critics who piled on the jargon to praise my work, but couldn't hide the jealousy in their eyes. I mechanically coped with the conversations without ever taking my eyes off the terrace. 20 minutes later, they finally returned. Amelia's lipstick is in need of a touch-up, a detail that couldn't escape me. "My dear," she came up to me, a strange determination in her voice. "Will you accompany me to the study for a moment? I have something for you." I followed her through the crowd. Guests were friendly and made way for us, and some joked if they wanted to give the birthday girl a special gift. If they knew the truth, I don't know what kind of expression they would show. The door to the study closed behind him, the heavy oak isolating the clamor outside. Marcus and Carter are already waiting inside. They stood on either side of the desk like two judges ready to pass judgment. The atmosphere in the room was suffocatingly stagnant. The shelves are filled with the classics of architecture, from Vitruvius to Corbusier, from I.M. Pei to Zaha Hadid. Ironically, I bought most of these books and Marcus never reads them. "Julian." Amelia let go of my arm and took a few steps back. She pulled a thick envelope from her Hermes handbag with a graceful and brutal movement. She flung the envelope onto the mahogany desk, the white paper like an abrupt snowflake, a harbinger of the coming winter. "We're done." Her voice was cold and clear, each word like a sharp blade. I looked at her, trying to find a trace of warmth in her face, even a hint of hesitation or reluctance. But all I saw was icy determination and a relief that bordered on rapture. 5 years of marriage, countless sweet moments, all of which have been reduced to nothing at this moment. "Here are the divorce papers," she continued, with lawyerly precision in her voice. "I've signed them. According to our prenuptial agreement, any property in your name will remain separate. In other words, you are netting out. The house, the cars, the investment accounts, all property acquired after the marriage goes to me." My eyes swept over the agreement. The header of Harbinson and Associates, the Seattle firm that specializes in divorce lawsuits, stood out. "Looks like she's been preparing for a long time." Of course, Marcus spoke up at this point, a victorious arrogance in his voice. "Your position with the Thorn Group will also be terminated at the same time. The board has made the decision to promote Carter as the new lead architect." "And the reason?" I asked, my voice surprisingly calm. "Reason?" Marcus sneered. "Do you really need a reason? But since you asked, I'll tell you. First, your design concepts are too radical and pose an unnecessary risk to the company. Second, It has been reported that you used your position to use company resources for private projects. Third, and most importantly, we don't need you anymore. Report. I look over at Carter, and the smile on his face gets even more smug. Yes, Carter picked up. I have it on good authority that you took some of the design elements of the Skyline project and used them for your private consulting project. This constitutes a serious conflict of interest and intellectual property infringement. Lies. Outright lies. However, they were well prepared and had apparently forged the required evidence. And, Amelia added, a cruel pleasure in her voice, I know you've been away a lot these past few months. A private investigator took pictures of you entering and exiting an abandoned building in an industrial area late at night. What are you doing there, Julian? Is there some unseen secret? I almost laughed out loud. They followed me, not realizing that what they saw was just the tip of the iceberg. So that's your plan? I looked around at the three men in front of me. Steal my designs, take my position, and then sweep me off my feet. Don't talk tough. Marcus waved his hand. It's just a business decision. You're very talented, Julian, but you don't belong in our circle. I gave you the opportunity to marry my daughter and take a prominent position in my company, but you were always an outsider. Now, it's time to get back to where you belong. Pack up your junk and get out. Amelia's voice was like a slap in the face. I'm giving you 24 hours to move out of the house. Don't try to resist. All legal procedures are in place. The three of them turned to leave, their footsteps fading away in the hallway. I could hear laughter coming from the party, guests still enjoying the food and wine, oblivious to what had just happened. I stood alone in my study, looking at the divorce papers on my desk, black and white and cold. Outside the window, Seattle's nightscape still shone brightly, the space needles stabbing into the night sky like a sword. They thought they had won. They thought Julian Vance was just a poor kid with a little talent who got lucky and climbed into the Thorne family. They thought they could enjoy the fruits of their victory in high spirits by getting rid of me. They were wrong. Big mistake. I took out my cell phone and dialed a number. Leo, I said, initiate the liquidation process. It's time to show them that they're messing with the wrong people. Understood, boss. The sound of a keyboard tapping came from the other end of the line. Expect them to start feeling the pain within 72 hours. Very good. I hung up the phone, took one last look at the divorce papers, and turned to leave. Walking out of the den, I put on the perfect mask. I smiled and explained to concerned guests that Amelia was not feeling well and needed to rest. I raised my glass and thanked everyone for coming, and even gave a humorous toast. No one noticed anything unusual, except old Wilson, who tapped me meaningfully on the shoulder. The party ends at midnight. After the last guest left, I stood alone in the empty living room. Amelia had taken her luggage to the hotel, apparently with Carter. Marcus Rolls-Royce disappears into the night, taking his smug victory with it. I walked over to the bar and poured myself a Macallan 30. The whiskey burned in my throat like a long-suppressed rage in my heart. 3 days. I gave them 3 days to enjoy their victory. 3 days later, as the waves of panic overwhelmed them, missed call after missed call and voicemail began to appear on my cell phone. 10 on the first day, 30 on the second, and by the third night the total was 78. Each message chronicles their entire journey from complacency to confusion, from confusion to panic, from panic to despair. But that's all an afterthought. Now, I'm going to my real home, the abandoned building they tracked me to. It's time to tear off the architect's mask and show his true fangs. At 2 a.m., the streets of Seattle are so quiet that the only thing left are the occasional taxicabs driving by. I drove the nondescript Honda Accord, not the Porsche 911 Amelia knew, but a vehicle I had registered under another identity, through the city and toward the southern industrial area. It's raining again, and it rains in this city 2/3 of the year. Raindrops pounded against the windshield and the wipers oscillated monotonously, like some kind of hypnotic rhythm. Jazz came on the radio and Miles Davis's trumpet tore through the silence of the night. The industrial area looked deserted in the dead of night. Abandoned factories looked like giant tombstones, and broken windows looked like countless empty eyes. Once the industrial heart of Seattle, it's now a forgotten corner. Most of the buildings are waiting to be demolished or remodeled, and only urban planners and vagabonds pay attention to the place. But for me, this place is the perfect camouflage. My destination was a 6-story concrete building with a rickety-looking exterior and walls covered in graffiti and moss. Danger. No trespassing signs are everywhere. Anyone passing by would quicken their pace for fear that the building would suddenly collapse. However, as my car approached, the hidden sensors had recognized the license plate. A large door disguised as a wall slid open noiselessly, revealing an interior parking lot. Inside were parked several cars, all high-performance but understated models: an Audi RS6, a BMW M5, a modified Ford F-150. I parked the car and walked to the elevator. Ostensibly, it was a rusty freight elevator, but when I pressed a specific combination of buttons, it rose smoothly to the top floor. The elevator doors opened, and I was greeted by a completely different world. 6,000 square feet of open space with 20-foot ceilings. The entire wall is bulletproof glass overlooking all of downtown Seattle. The interior is minimalist and modern, with black marble floors reflecting the glow of recessed LED lights. Rows and rows of servers ran quietly in the heated glass room, their blue lights blinking like stars. This is Acheron's headquarters. Welcome home, boss. Leo's voice came from the workstation. He sat in front of a curved monitor that surrounded him on 3 sides, a myriad of data streams scrolling across the screen. Leo Chun, 32 years old, former MIT genius, used to be one of the top white hat hackers in Europe. I rescued him from a safe house in Prague 5 years ago when he was being hunted for exposing financial fraud at a multinational corporation. Since then, he has been Acheron's technical director. Status report. I took off my tuxedo jacket and loosened my bow tie. Thorn Group's internal email system. We've been monitoring it for 6 months. Leo's fingers flew across the keyboard as a detailed timeline appeared on the screen. Amelia and Carter's first personal contact was on June 15th, an email that appeared to be official, but used a specific wording code word. Starting in July, they began meeting regularly at the Fairmont Hotel on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. The hotel's security footage appeared on the screen, blurry but enough to see the two acting intimately. In August, Marcus began contacting Carter in secret, ostensibly business counseling, but actually planning tonight's action. More emails and meeting minutes appeared on the screen. Their plan was well thought out. First to get Carter back, then to create the illusion that you were misappropriating company assets, and finally to have a showdown on your birthday for maximum humiliation. They copied my design. Not just copying. Leo pulled up another set of data. They hacked into your workstation and downloaded all the CAD files, 3D models, bills of materials, supplier information. Every detail of the Skyline project was stolen. Carter intends to use that to start his own firm, and Marcus will provide him with startup capital and client resources. I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows and looked at the Thorn building in the distance. 42 stories of glass towers glistening in the night, the pride of Marcus and soon to be his grave. What about our response? I asked. Leo gave a dangerous smile. Do you remember 2 years ago when you asked me to embed special codes in all the design files? Acheron watermarking system. Precisely. Every document, every drawing, even every pixel contains our digital signature. Invisible to the naked eye and undetectable by conventional software, but in the courtroom. He pressed enter and a technical analysis report appeared on the screen. These watermarks are as unique as DNA and can prove the true attribution of all designs. Patent applications? All done through shell companies in Switzerland and the Cayman Islands. Leo pulls up legal documents. Ostensibly, the patents belong to different companies, but the actual controller is you. Once Carter used these designs, he stepped into a minefield. I nodded. This is just the first step. What about the Thorn Group's finances? That's the funniest part. Leo's eyes twinkled with excitement. In order to frame you, they need to create the illusion that you embezzled. Marcus and Amelia have transferred $5 million from the company's account over the past 2 months into an offshore account controlled by Carter. They intend to transfer back after you've been convicted, but we can make that money disappear. It's been arranged. At 9 a.m. tomorrow, when they try to transfer the funds back, they will find that the account has been frozen. That offshore bank will open an investigation over suspicious transactions that will take at least 6 months. Perfect. The loss of $5 million of liquidity is not fatal to the Thorn Group, but it is enough to cause concern to the board of directors of. What else? Leo's expression turned serious. Boss, there's something you need to know. I was tracking down Marcus's historical transactions, and I found something. He pulled up a stale file. Crestline Construction, 2001, you remember? My heart missed a beat. Professor Robert Patterson's company. That's right. After Professor Patterson died in an accident, his company was bought out by Thorn at a low price. But I found some backups of deleted emails. Leo zoomed in on one of them. Patterson emailed his attorney the day before he died, saying that Marcus had threatened him with something unfortunate if he didn't agree to the buyout. Anger burns in my chest. Robert Patterson was my mentor at MIT, and it was he who guided me down the path of architectural design. His death was always ruled an accident, but there were always questions in my mind. There's more, Leo continues. All the competitors who have dared to challenge the Thorn Group over the last 20 years have suffered various misfortunes. Construction site accidents, financial crises, family changes. Too many coincidences. Where's the evidence? Most of it was destroyed, but there are always traces. Leo pointed to the screen. I've created a complete timeline and correlation analysis. Not enough for a conviction, but enough to pique the FBI's interest. I took a deep breath. The plan for revenge needs to be upgraded. It's not just for me. It's for Professor Patterson and for all the people that Marcus Thorn has ruined. Execute the liquidation plan. I gave the order. Phase 1, freeze the flow of their assets. The second stage is to bring their crimes to light. Stage 3, destroy. Leo took over. Total destruction. I confirmed. Over the next few hours, Leo and his team began a precision operation. Packets are encrypted and sent to different media and regulatory agencies. Legal documents are filed in the federal court. The whistleblower letter was sent anonymously to the FBI and SEC. Meanwhile, I'm back in my office, a minimalist but personal space. Works by Frank Lloyd Wright and Louis Kong hang on the walls, and the shelves are filled with works on architectural theory and philosophy. I opened the safe and removed a black folder. Inside are my real identity papers. Julian Vance is indeed my real name, but my past has been deliberately erased. Before I became an architect, I had another identity, a former CIA analyst specializing in economic espionage and corporate infiltration. After a failed mission, I chose to retire and used my savings to found Acheron. On the surface, I'm a talented architect. In fact, I control an elite team that provides deep security services to high-end clients. Our clients include Fortune 500 CEOs, politicians, and even foreign governments. We protect their secrets, neutralize their threats, and, if necessary, engage in active defense. Acheron is a legend in the industry. No one knows our true location or is even sure we really exist. Our success rate is 100% because we never take on a task that we can't accomplish. And now, all of Acheron's resources will be devoted to one goal: destroying the Thorn Empire. It's almost dawn. Through the bulletproof glass, I saw the first rays of dawn appear in the east. A new day is about to begin, and for Marcus Thorn, it will be the beginning of his nightmare. My cell phone rang, and it was Leo. Boss, phase 1 is complete. All the traps have been set. Very good, I said. Notify everyone and get into a fighting position. This is a war we must win. And win completely. Hanging up the phone, I took one last look at the Thorn building in the distance. Marcus, Amelia, Carter, you think you've taken everything from me. But what you don't realize is that what you've taken away is an illusion. The real Julian Vance, who you never really knew. And now you will pay for your arrogance and greed. The game is on. The sun has just risen, and the financial district of Seattle has begun a busy new day. People in suits carrying Starbucks hurry into office buildings. No one noticed that a well-planned financial storm was brewing. At exactly 8 a.m., a breaking story appeared on the Seattle Business Times website. Thorn Group chief architect Julian Vance leaves, accuses firm of stealing intellectual property. The article describes in detail how Carter Wells obtained the design for the Skyline project through unscrupulous means and suggests that Thorn Group management may have been involved. Reporter Sarah Kim is one of Seattle's best investigative journalists. The anonymous tip she received contained detailed evidence, including email exchanges, meeting minutes, and even system logs of Carter downloading files from my workstation. As a truth-seeking journalist, there was no way she would let such a scoop go. At 8:15, Thorn Group's share price began to fluctuate. At first, it was only a small drop and investors were still on the sidelines. But when more details were revealed, particularly the news that the Skyline project could face legal trouble, the sell-off began. The atmosphere in Marcus Thorn's office was stark and suffocating. "What the fuck is going on?" Marcus growled, the coffee cup in his hand being slammed hard against the wall, brown liquid running down the wall like dried blood. His assistant stood trembling in the doorway. "The board members are waiting for you. They want an explanation." "Explain?" Marcus' face turned red. "Tell them it's all slander. It's all revenge from that asshole Julian." But he knew in his heart that it was more than slander. That evidence was so detailed that it sent chills down his back. Meanwhile, Amelia is in her lawyer's office, full of panic. "What do you mean the divorce settlement may not be valid?" She was practically screaming. "I just signed it last night." Attorney Harold Williamson pushed up his glasses and looked grave. "Ms. Thorne, if your husband can prove that this agreement was signed under fraud and duress, there is a possibility that the court could invalidate the agreement. Worse yet, if he can prove an inappropriate relationship between you and Mr. Wells, and that you conspired to harm his professional interests." "This can't be right." Amelia interrupted him. "We were careful not to leave any evidence." The lawyer was silent for a few seconds, then opened his laptop. "I'm afraid you're wrong. Someone sent these to us this morning." A series of photos and videos appeared on the screen. Surveillance footage from the Fairmont Hotel, photos of her and Carter kissing, and even intimate shots of them in her Mercedes. Each one is labeled with a precise time and place. Amelia's face turned pale. "Where did this come from?" "Anonymous mail." The lawyer shook his head. "But the source doesn't matter anymore. It is important to note that if these are presented to the court, you will not only lose your divorce case, but you could also face criminal charges." At exactly 9 o'clock, another bomb went off. Leo triggered the offshore account alert as planned. The banking system in the Cayman Islands detected unusual trading activity and immediately froze the account in Carter's name. $5 million just locked out of reach. Carter was in his makeshift office, a luxury suite Marcus had prepared especially for him, right next door to my old office, when he got the call from the bank. "What do you mean you can't transfer money?" His voice was shaking. "That's my account." "Mr. Wells." The voice on the other end of the line was formulaic and cold. "Under international anti-money laundering regulations, we need to investigate the source of this money. The account will remain frozen until the investigation is completed." "How long will the investigation take?" "It usually takes 6 to 9 months. If multiple jurisdictions are involved, it could be longer." Carter hangs up, his hands shaking. He immediately dialed Marcus's inside line. "Something's happened." His voice sounded like it was caught in his throat. "The money's been frozen." There was silence on Marcus' end for a full 10 seconds. "What did you say?" "The bank froze the account. They said they were going to investigate the source of the funds." Carter was close to breaking down. "Marcus, that's $5 million. If it is found out that it is from a company." "Shut up," Marcus growled. "Not over the phone. Come to my office right now." But it's too late. This call, like all the calls in the previous 6 months, was recorded by Acheron's system. At 9:30, the board of directors of the Thorn Group met in emergency session. In the conference room, the 12 board members had serious expressions. They are both heavyweights in the Seattle business community and are not easily swayed by emotions. But what happened this morning made them feel truly threatened. "Marcus," spoke up the chairman of the board, Richard Sterling, a 70-year-old banker who was always direct in his speech. "You need to explain why our stock price has dropped 12% in an hour." Marcus tried to stay calm. "This is just an act of revenge by a disgruntled former employee, Julian Vance, for personal reasons." "Personal reasons?" Another board member interrupted him. "As I understand it, Vance is your son-in-law, and there are rumors that his departure has something to do with your daughter and Carter Wells." The conference room rang with whispers. Apparently, the morning's news had spread throughout the business district. "That's all rumors." Marcus raised his voice. "What matters is how we respond to the current crisis." "Speaking of crises," Sterling continued, "I just received a report from the CFO that $5 million of the company's money is unaccounted for. Marcus, can you explain? Marcus' face changed. He looked over to Amelia, who was sitting in the corner with her head down, avoiding everyone's gaze. That's an interim financial arrangement. The funds will be back soon. How fast? Sterling pursued. Marcus couldn't speak. Just then, the door to the conference room was pushed open. Linda Chun, the company's legal counselor, walked in quickly, her face grave. Folks, we just received a subpoena from the federal court. She held up the document in her hand. Julian Vance sued the Thorne Group, Marcus Thorne, Amelia Thorne, and Carter Wells on 7 counts of theft of trade secrets, intellectual property infringement, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Amount claimed, $200 million. A deathly silence fell over the conference room. $200 million. For the Thorne Group, which has an annual revenue of $1.5 billion, this is not a figure that can be easily afforded. Not only that, Linda continued, but he filed for a temporary injunction. If the court approves, we will not be able to use any of the designs and technologies associated with the Skyline project. The Skyline project is the most important project of the Thorne Group for the next 5 years, with an expected profit of more than $1 billion. Losing this program would be a fatal blow to the company. This can't be right. Carter stood up abruptly. Those designs are mine. I can prove it. How do you prove it? Linda looked at him coldly. Vance's legal team provided detailed evidence showing that all the designs bear his digital watermark. Mr. Wells, can you explain why you have someone else's watermark in your original design? Carter was dumbfounded. He didn't know what a digital watermark was, let alone that every file he stole was a time bomb. The board members' eyes darted between Marcus, Amelia, and Carter, suspicion growing in their eyes. I move, Sterling said slowly, that Marcus Thorne be suspended as CEO until this matter is cleared up, and that Sarah Mitchell, vice president, act in his place. You can't do this. Marcus snapped to his feet. This is my company. No, Marcus, Sterling's voice was icy. This is a stockholders' corporation, and your behavior is hurting shareholders. The vote took place quickly. 12-0, no opposition. Marcus Thorne, the emperor who ruled Seattle's construction industry for 2 decades, lost his throne in a single morning. And that is just the beginning. At 12 noon, things continued to fester. Greenwatch Seattle, an environmental organization, held a press conference to release an investigative report. The report shows that the Thorne Group has violated environmental regulations by illegally dumping construction waste on multiple occasions over the past decade. The contaminated area includes 3 low-income neighborhoods, affecting more than 5,000 residents. The most shocking aspect of the report is a set of photographs showing Thorne Group trucks dumping toxic waste near these communities late at night. The photos were taken over a span of 5 years and are clearly the result of someone following the evidence over a long period of time. We demand a thorough investigation. The head of Greenwatch got emotional on camera. The Thorne Group must pay for their crimes. Shares in Thorne Group continued to fall after the news broke and closed down 22%. At 3 p.m., more bad news arrived. 3 major Thorne Group clients announced the suspension of their cooperation, citing doubts about the company's management and ethical standards. These 3 customers account for 30% of Thorne Group's annual revenue. Meanwhile, the city of Seattle has announced that it will re-examine all of Thorne Group's permits for projects under construction. If a violation is found, it will be called off immediately. Carter was fidgeting in his office. He kept calling the bank to try to unfreeze the account, but the response was the same. The investigation would take time. He also tried to contact his partner in Los Angeles, but his calls were either not answered or were simply disconnected. Obviously, no one wants to be associated with someone who is embroiled in a scandal. Amelia is no better. Her credit cards were frozen by the bank, not for lack of money, but because the bank was concerned that the upcoming divorce proceedings would affect her ability to make payments. For the first time, she experienced the feeling of falling from the clouds. At 6 p.m., my cell phone finally rang. It's Marcus calling. Julian. His voice was no longer haughty, but held a hint of exhaustion and anger. What do you want? I leaned back on the leather couch in Acheron's headquarters and looked out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the nighttime view of Seattle. What do I want? I repeated his question. Marcus, I don't want anything. I'm just taking back what's mine. Stop pretending, he growled. You've ruined my company, ruined my family. No, my voice was as calm as a puddle of dead water. You're the one who ruined it all. When you threatened Robert Patterson, when you decided to frame me, you chose this path. There was silence on the other end of the line. Patterson, Marcus's voice shook a little. What are you talking about? March 15th, 2001, for 30 p.m. You were in Patterson's office and threatened to make him regret it if he didn't agree to the takeover. The next day, he died in an accident. You? How could you possibly know? Because I've been waiting for this day, Marcus. 20 years of waiting. I stood up and walked over to the window. Professor Patterson was my mentor. He was the one who taught me what architecture was and what it was supposed to be. And you took his life just for your greed. You have no proof. Marcus shouted hysterically. Oh, I have. I laughed softly. A recording of all your threats. Tomorrow morning, it'll be on the desk of an FBI agent. The sound of something heavy hitting the ground came over the phone, probably Marcus slumping in his chair. And, Marcus, I continued, check your Swiss account. You'll find some interesting variations. I hung up, ignoring the callback that rang with it. At that moment, Leo came over. Phase 2 is ready. Tomorrow, all the scandals will break out. Very good. I nodded. Let the storm come harder. That night, the Thorne family had the longest night of their lives. Marcus discovers that $10 million of emergency funds have disappeared from his Swiss account. Not transferred, but frozen by a Swiss bank on suspicion of money laundering. Amelia is crying in her hotel room. Carter hadn't returned her calls in 2 hours. She began to realize that she might be being used. Carter, on the other hand, is frantically deleting all the files on his computer in an attempt to destroy the evidence. But what he doesn't realize is that it's too late. Acheron's system had backed up all the data, including every file he deleted. At midnight, my cell phone showed 78 missed calls, mostly from Amelia, some from Marcus, and even a couple from Carter. I didn't pick up a single one. Their messages range from anger to pleading, from threats to collapse, documenting the entire process of the fall of an empire. And this, just the first day. Early the next morning, Seattle awoke to a sudden rainstorm. The rain washed over the city as if to wash away the sins of yesterday. But for the Thorne family, the real nightmare has just begun. At 7 a.m., an anonymous package was received at the FBI Seattle office. Inside was a miniature recorder and a detailed written description. The content of the recording raised the eyebrows of veteran agent David Morrison. Request a search warrant immediately, Morrison told his team, targeting Marcus Thorne's residence and office. Also, contact the Seattle Police Department's cold case unit and have them pull the case file on Robert Patterson from 2001. Meanwhile, Michael Chun, an investigative reporter for the New York Times, is in his Seattle hotel room, poring over emails he received last night. As one of the nation's most recognized investigative journalists, he had received countless blurbs, but the level of detail in this material shocked him. The emails contain not only a transcript of the audio recording of the Patterson case, but also a detailed analysis of all the Thorne Group's suspicious transactions over the last 20 years. Every bribe, every threat, every destroyed competitor is well documented. This is going to be the biggest business scandal of the year. Michael told his editor, I need 24 hours to verify this information. At 9 a.m., Marcus Thorne was awakened at his mansion by a knock at the door from the FBI. Mr. Marcus Thorne, we have a warrant. Agent Morrison produced the paperwork. Please cooperate with our investigation. A dozen FBI agents flooded into the $20 million lakeside mansion. They searched every room and took all the computers, files, and safes. Marcus stood in the center of the living room, his face as pale as paper. His wife, Eleanor, a kind but weak woman, whimpered in the corner. She never realized how dirty her husband's business was until the police showed up on the doorstep. This is a misunderstanding. Marcus tried to remain calm. I'm going to contact my attorney. Sure, Morrison grimaced, but I suggest you have a very good lawyer on hand. Almost simultaneously, the headquarters of the Thorne Group was searched. Employees watched in disbelief as FBI agents removed box after box of documents. The company's stock price fell right after the opening bell. Carter Wells was packing up his personal belongings to leave quietly when he was stopped by the FBI in the elevator. Mr. Wells, we need to ask you a few questions. I need a lawyer. Carter's voice was shaking. Sure, but until then, come with us. Amelia was at the lawyer's office when she learned the news. She rushed out of the conference room, only to find that the outside was already crowded with reporters. Miss Thorne, what is your comment on the allegations of your father's alleged murder? Are you aware of the company's illegal behavior? Was your relationship with Carter Wells involved in a business offense? Flashing lights stung her eyes, and reporters' questions shot at her like bullets. For the first time, she experienced the feeling of being rounded up. At noon, Leo updated me on the progress. The FBI has frozen the main accounts of the Thorne Group. He pointed to the data on the screen. The company's working capital can only last 2 weeks. If it's not resolved soon, they will face bankruptcy. Where are we on the Patterson case? The police have reopened the investigation. With the recordings as new evidence, along with the other material we provided, it will be difficult for Marcus to escape charges. I nodded and walked over to the window. It was still raining, and the whole city was shrouded in a gray vapor. Another thing, Leo said, is that Amelia tried to move assets in her name, but they were all frozen by the court. Under Washington law, neither party can dispose of community property during a divorce proceeding. Where is she now? The Ritz-Carlton, but her credit card has been suspended. The hotel is demanding that she settle her bill by tonight, or she will be asked to leave. The taste of falling from a high place is always extra bitter. At 2 p.m., things took an unexpected turn. An unknown number called my private cell phone. This number is known to only a very few people. Mr. Vance, a low voice said, I'm Thomas Riker. Thomas Riker, king of the Seattle underworld. He controls half of the city's gray industry, everything from casinos to money laundering. A lot of Marcus Thorne's unseen business needs to go through him. Mr. Riker, I responded calmly, what can I do for you? I think we should meet. I have some information about Marcus that might be useful to you. Location, the old place. In an hour. The old place was an abandoned warehouse in an industrial area where Riker often had private meetings. I realized this could be a trap, but it could also be an opportunity to get more evidence. I'll be on time. Hanging up the phone, I said to Leo, prepare plan B. If I'm not back in 2 hours, execute a full strike. An hour later, I showed up at the appointed place. The only people in the warehouse are Riker and his 2 bodyguards. The 60-year-old man of Irish descent was well-maintained, with meticulous gray hair and a still strong frame hidden under a tailored suit. Julian. He used my first name instead of my last, which was some sort of recognition. Have a seat. I sat across from him, a worn wooden table separating the two of them. I heard there was something between you and Marcus. Unpleasant. Riker lit a cigar. You're well informed as always. After 40 years in this town, you always know someone. He exhaled a smoke ring. I thought you might be interested in this. He pushed over an envelope. I opened it and looked at it, and inside were some photos and documents. It is Marcus's record of special deals over the last 10 years. Riker gave an impish smile. Every bribe, every money laundering is here, including how he handled Patterson. Why are you giving me these? Because Marcus is useless. Riker's eyes suddenly turned cold. A man about to go to prison is worthless to me. And you, Julian, you're a smart man. You know how to get there without leaving a trace. What do you want? Nothing. He stood up. Consider it a response to a tribute from my peers. Before he turned to leave, he turned back and said, watch out for Carter Wells. That man is much more dangerous than he looks. He owes a lot of money to people in LA that he shouldn't. When they left, I scrutinized the material in the envelope. If the evidence I had before was a bullet, what Riker gave me was a nuclear bomb. With this, Marcus Thorne will never be the same. At 7 p.m., every major media outlet in Seattle is reporting the same story. The Thorne Group is suspected of multiple business crimes, and CEO Marcus Thorne could face murder charges. At the close of the stock market, Thorne Group's market capitalization had evaporated by 60%. What was once a giant in the construction industry is crumbling at a rate visible to the naked eye. When I got back to Acheron HQ, Leo was dealing with massive amounts of data. Here's an interesting discovery. He pointed to the screen. Carter Wells does owe the Black Gang $2 million in Los Angeles. He came back to Seattle not just for Amelia, but to hide from his debt. That explains why he was so desperate to get that $5 million. And even more interesting, Leo pulled up another file. I hacked into Carter's private email. Not only does he plan to take the money, he plans to abandon Amelia when it's done. He's already bought a plane ticket to Mexico. Human nature is ugly, sometimes beyond imagination. Send these to Amelia. I said, let her know what she's being used for. At 10 p.m., my cell phone rang again. This time it's Amelia. Julian. Her voice was hoarse. She had obviously been crying for a long time. Please, can you see me? There's no need. Please. She was almost pleading. I know I'm wrong. I know I've done something unforgivable. But please, for old time's sake, see me. Just one side. I was silent for a few seconds. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Volunteer Park Greenhouse. Thank you, she sobbed. Thank you. Hanging up, Leo looked at me quizzically. Why do you want to see her? Because the most complete way to destroy someone is not to make her lose everything, but to make her realize exactly how she lost everything. That night, Marcus Thorne spent the first sleepless night of his life in a detention center. Carter Wells, for his part, is frantically searching for a way to escape, but his passport has been seized by the FBI. As for Amelia, she sits in her soon-to-be repossessed hotel room, looking at the emails from Leo and the evidence of Carter's plans to abandon her, and finally realizes that she's nothing more than a pawn to be used. By the time the sun rose the next day, the Thorne Empire was on shaky ground. But the real killing blow was yet to come. The Emerald City looked particularly somber in the early morning as Seattle was shrouded in mist. In the FBI's Seattle office, Agent David Morrison is scrutinizing the evidence at hand. 20 years, he said to his coworker. This asshole has been hiding for 20 years. Spread out on the table was all the information on the Robert Patterson case. The original police report characterized it as an accident. A scaffolding at the construction site suddenly collapsed, and Professor Patterson was tragically crushed underneath. But now with the recordings as evidence, everything is different. Marcus Thorne's voice is clearly recognizable on the recording. Patterson, you better think this through. Either accept my offer to buy the company, or construction sites are dangerous places and accidents can happen at any time. Are you threatening me? Patterson's voice was laced with anger. I'm just stating the facts. Think of your family, Robert, your wife, your student. Make the right choice for their sake. The recording ends in a scuffle. Patterson died the next afternoon. Morrison picked up the phone. Notify the DA's office that we have enough evidence to charge Marcus Thorne with first-degree murder. Meanwhile, the front page of the New York Times has been printed. The headline reads, Dark Secrets of Seattle's Architectural Empire. Murder, bribery, and corruption. Michael Chen's reporting is detailed and shocking. Not only did he verify all the allegations, he found more victims. In the past 2 decades, at least 5 companies have suffered accidents in competition with the Thorne Group, with the principals either dead, seriously injured, or bankrupt. At 10 a.m., Marcus Thorne was formally arrested. Hundreds of employees peered out of windows as police cars pulled up in front of the Thorne building. The once untouchable boss, now in handcuffs, is escorted by FBI agents to the prison van. Media cameras captured this historic moment. Marcus tried to cover his face with his jacket, but was still caught on camera with his horrified and desperate expression. Eleanor Thorne fainted on the spot as she watched the news live from her home. This kind woman never knew that her husband had blood on his hands. Carter Wells is no better. Los Angeles creditors saw the news and immediately sent people to Seattle. They don't care about the FBI investigation, they just want their money back. Around noon, Carter was stopped by 2 Mexicans in a parking lot. Mr. Wells, one of them said in accented English. Mr. Rodriguez asked us to take a message. Either you pay back the money or you pay back the life. Carter shuddered. I need time. You have 72 hours. The other man flashed the pistol at his waist. Don't try to run. We'll find you. After they left, Carter sat paralyzed on the floor. He dialed Amelia's number, but the person hung up straight away. He tried a few more times and finally got a text. I see what you're planning, asshole. Desperate, Carter makes a fateful decision. He drives to the FBI office, ready to cooperate with the government and sell out everyone in exchange for protection. I arrived at the greenhouse at Volunteer Park at 2 p.m. as promised. Built in 1912, this Victorian conservatory is one of Seattle's landmarks. The glass dome is lush with tropical plants. The air was filled with the scent of earth and flowers. Amelia is already there waiting. She was sitting on a bench, dressed in simple jeans and a sweater, and he'd never seen her so plainly dressed. Without the expensive jewelry and designer bags, she looked like a normal 30-year-old woman. Tired, haggard, eyes red and swollen. There you are. She stood up and tried to approach, but the look in my eyes stopped her in her tracks. 5 minutes. I said, Julian, She took a deep breath. I know it's no use apologizing. I betrayed you. I betrayed our marriage. Me and Carter. That was the stupidest thing I've ever done in my life. Why? My voice was emotionless. She smiled bitterly. Because I'm scared. Fear of your success. Fear of being overshadowed by your light. I grew up living in my father's shadow, and it was hard to get my own place in the company. But when you came, everyone was talking about you and praising you. Even my father looks at me differently, as if I'm just an accessory to you. So you chose Carter? He made me feel important. Tears streamed down her face. He said I was special, that I deserved better. I know it sounds ridiculous, but at the time I just believed it. I didn't realize I was screwed until I saw those emails last night. She took an envelope out of her bag. This is all the compensation I can give you. The real estate license, the car keys, and the money left in my personal account. I know this is far from enough, but I don't need these. I interrupted her. So what do you need? She looked up with a glimmer of hope in her eyes. Anything I can do. I don't need anything. I looked her in the eyes. Amelia, do you realize what you've truly lost? She shook her head. It's not wealth. It's not status. It's not even me you've lost. I said slowly, what you lost was yourself. That Amelia, who was once full of ideals and believed in love, is dead. All that remains is a stranger controlled by fear and greed. Her body trembled. Your father will spend the rest of his life in prison. Your name will always be associated with scandal. Everything you once had is gone. I turned and prepared to leave. But the saddest part is that this could have been avoided. If you choose trust over betrayal, if you choose communication over deception. Julian, she shouted behind her. What else could I do? Tell me what else I can do to make up for it. I stopped but didn't look back. Live with your remorse. That's your punishment. As I left the greenhouse, I heard her break down and cry. But I didn't look back. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. In the evening, things reached a climax. Carter Wells signed the plea agreement at FBI headquarters. In order to reduce his sentence and gain protection, he confessed all the inside information. Not only does it include his plans with Amelia, but all of Marcus' transgressions over the years. He even provides a blacklist of Marcus, names of people who have been threatened, framed, and destroyed. There are 23 people on the list, and Robert Patterson is just one of them. When the news broke, all of Seattle was shocked. Thorn Group's share price fell to an all-time low. The board of directors met urgently and unanimously decided to file for bankruptcy protection. A business empire once worth tens of billions of dollars was reduced to nothing in just 3 days. Those politicians and businessmen who once sucked up to Marcus are now eager to clear the air. The mayor said in a press conference that all government contracts related to the Thorn Group will be thoroughly investigated. 3 city councilors have already resigned for accepting bribes. Late at night, I stood on the terrace of Acheron's headquarters overlooking the city that never sleeps. Leo walks over and hands me a glass of whiskey. Phase 2 complete. Thorn's empire has completely collapsed. Where are the victims? Patterson's widow will receive an anonymous donation, enough for her to live in peace. Other victims will be compensated accordingly. Leo paused. The money came from Marcus' Swiss account. I nodded. Justice is 20 years late, but it's finally here. Next, Leo asked. Wrap it up. I took a sip of my whiskey. Make sure each of them gets what they deserve. Understood. Leo turned to leave and turned back. By the way, those creditors of Carter's have found him. Even though he's under FBI protection, I don't think he's going to do well. At 3 a.m., my cell phone showed a new voicemail message. It's Eleanor Thorn, Marcus' wife. Her voice was calm, so calm it was heartbreaking. Mr. Vance, I know you did all this. I don't hate you, really. The things Marcus does. I feel sorry for the victims. I just wanted to tell you that I'm going to divorce him and leave town. I'm 60 years old and want to do something worthwhile with my remaining days. Maybe volunteer in Africa, maybe teach. Thank you for letting the truth come out, harsh as it is. I deleted the message. At least one other Thorne family member has kept the last of their dignity. Dawn ushered in a new day in Seattle. The sun pierced through the clouds and gilded the city. But for some, the night is just beginning. A week later, the federal court. Marcus Thorne's pretrial hearing attracted national media attention. Outside the courtroom, demonstrators carried signs reading, "Justice for Patterson." The reopening of an unsolved case from 20 years ago has the entire judicial community watching. Inside the courtroom, Marcus sits at the defense table. In one short week, he aged 10 years. The once neatly combed silver hair now looks disheveled, and the expensive suit has been replaced with an orange prison uniform. But his eyes still held a hint of resignation. The prosecutor, Amanda Walsh, is a 40-year-old African-American woman with a reputation for being tough. She stood up and began to state the charges. The defendant, Marcus Thorne, is charged with 17 counts of first-degree murder, racketeering, money laundering, and bribery. Her voice echoed through the courtroom. The evidence includes, but is not limited to, audio recordings of the decedent's life, the testimony of multiple witnesses, financial records, and the confession of the defendant's former son-in-law, Carter Wells. Marcus' face hardened at the mention of Carter's name. Betrayal, it turns out, is contagious. Marcus' lawyer is Jonathan Blake, Seattle's most expensive criminal defense attorney. Even so, in the face of a mountain of evidence, he can only do a trapped beast. "Your Honor," Blake stood up, "my client denies all charges. The so-called recordings could have been faked, the witnesses could have been bribed, and as for Mr. Wells' testimony, how much credibility can there be in the words of a criminal who will say anything to reduce his sentence?" But when the prosecutor played that recording, the entire courtroom went silent. Marcus' voice threatening Patterson was clearly recognizable, each word like a knife stabbing into his heart. Bail application denied. The judge concluded by announcing, "The defendant will remain in custody pending a formal trial." Our eyes met briefly as Marcus was taken away. There was hatred in his eyes, there was resentment, but more than anything else, there was fear. He knew that life imprisonment awaited him. Outside the courtroom, Patterson's widow, Helen, is being interviewed. The 70-year-old man was in tears. "It's been 20 years, and I've finally waited for this day. Robert can rest in peace." I stood in the crowd and watched it all in silence. Justice has been too long overdue, but it has finally arrived. In the afternoon, Vance Innovation's new office was officially opened. This new building in the heart of the city was designed by me personally and utilizes state-of-the-art green technology. The glass curtain wall automatically adjusts its transparency according to the sunlight, and the solar panels on the roof provide 60% of the building's electricity. Congratulations, Julian. Wilson Sr. brought his team to visit. This is the future of architecture. The opening reception brought together the best of Seattle's architectural community. Interestingly, many were once clients of the Thorne Group. The walls are falling down, and the business world is so realistic. "Mr. Vance, I was approached by the mayor's assistant. The mayor would like to invite you to bid on the design of the new city hall." "I'll think about it," I responded politely. Leo whispers to me, "Amelia is here." I turned to see her standing in the corner of the hall with a glass of champagne in her hand, looking out of place. She changed her hair and wore a cheap suit from Target. If you don't look closely, it's hard to recognize that this is the once high and mighty Thorne millennial. She saw me and hesitated, but came over. "Congratulations," she said, her voice soft. "Thanks. I got a job." She tried to squeeze out a smile, working as an assistant at a small accounting firm. "The pay isn't great, but at least you can support yourself." "That's good." The silence spread. Everyone around us was deliberately avoiding us and giving us space. "My father's trial." She bit her lip. "He might actually spend the rest of his life in prison. He paid for his behavior." "I know." She lowered her head. I just didn't think it would end like this." "Amelia." I looked at her. "What did you come here to say?" She took a deep breath. "I wanted to say thank you." "Thanks. Thank you for not destroying me." Her eyes watered a little. "You could have put me in jail too, but you didn't. You gave me the chance to start over." "That's not mercy," I corrected her. "Making you live in remorse is crueler than prison." She smiled bitterly. "Maybe, but at least I have a chance to redeem myself." I joined a charitable organization to help those who are victims of domestic violence. I know it doesn't change anything, but good luck, I said and turned away. Some wounds never heal, some relationships never mend. But at least, she chose to spend the rest of her life making amends. In the evening, after the celebratory party, I was left alone in my office. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Seattle's night scene sparkled as usual. The Space Needle still stands in the distance, witnessing the city's transformation. My cell phone rang, an unknown number. Mr. Vance, a voice with a British accent. I am a representative of the Hartwell Group in London. We heard about your recent achievement. We have a project we'd like to talk to you about. I'm listening. It's not something you can tell over the phone. If you have time, we'd love to have you come to London. Of course, we'll cover all expenses. I looked at the calendar. How about next Wednesday? Perfect. We'll arrange everything. Hanging up the phone, I pondered. The Hartwell Group is one of the largest real estate developers in Europe. This call means Vance Innovations is going international. But before that, there's one more thing to do. I opened the safe and took out the box that contained Professor Patterson's belongings. Inside were his design manuscripts, award certificates, and a photo. It was of him and me at my graduate school graduation. Teacher, I said softly, justice is 20 years late, but it's finally here. You may rest in peace. I relocked the box. The past is past, and it's time to move on. The next day, all the major media outlets were reporting the results of Marcus Thorne's preliminary hearing. Meanwhile, another piece of news has also garnered attention. Vance Innovations has been awarded design contracts for 3 major projects with a combined value of more than $500 million. The Architect Who Rises from the Ruins is the title Architectural Digest used to describe my story. But what they don't realize is that it's not a rise, it's a return. Back to where I really am. The end came sooner than expected for Carter Wells. Despite the protection of the FBI, Los Angeles debtors found a way. A month later, he suffered a serious head injury when he accidentally slipped and fell in the bathroom of the Witness Protection Unit. Although he was saved, he was left with permanent brain damage. Doctors say his intelligence has deteriorated to the level of a 10-year-old child. This is perhaps the most ironic punishment for a man who once had his organs in the right place. Amelia just nodded in silence as she heard the news. She had learned to accept her fate. 6 months later, Marcus Thorne was sentenced to life in prison without parole. I wasn't in the courtroom on the day of sentencing. I'm in London, designing Hartwell Group's new headquarters for them. It was a building that breathed, and every inch of space spoke of the future. Leo sent a video of the sentencing. Marcus slumped in his chair as he heard the verdict. What was once an emperor is now nothing more than a prisoner. It's over, Leo said in the message. No, I replied. This is just the beginning. Outside the window, the Thames flows quietly. The sun sets in the west, coloring the river gold. My cell phone rang again, this time from a client in New York. Then Tokyo's, Dubai's, Sydney's. The world is watching the architect who was reborn from the ashes. But what they don't know is that I never went down. I'm just waiting for the right time, waiting for justice. Now the wait is over. The real Julian Vance, finally able to spread his wings. A year later, Seattle. The first rays of the morning sun shine into my new home, a modernist home built on Mercer Island. This is the first home I have designed for myself, and every detail reflects my understanding of architecture, simplicity, practicality, and harmony with nature. Standing on the terrace, you can see the Seattle skyline in the distance. The main structure of the Skyline project has been completed, and the spiraling eco tower will soon become the city's new landmark. Breakfast is ready. Maya's voice came from inside the house. Maya Chun is an architect I met 6 months ago, a graduate of Harvard's Graduate School of Design who shares my passion for sustainable architecture. We met at an architectural forum in Tokyo, and her sharp insights and unique design concepts immediately attracted me. Coming right up, I took one last look at the city in the distance and then walked inside. A simple breakfast was on the table: fried eggs, bacon, whole wheat toast, and fresh orange juice. Maya is looking at the architecture section of the New York Times. Your Dubai project is making headlines. She pointed to the paper, an oasis in the desert, the sustainable miracle of Vance. I sat down and took the paper. The photo is of the Dubai Eco Business Center that I designed. The whole building is covered with vertical gardens and stands out in the desert. They exaggerate. I said. Mr. Modesty. Maya laughed. Is it so hard to recognize your accomplishments? We looked at each other and smiled. I've learned a lot this year, not the least of which is, don't let the past define your future. After breakfast, we drove downtown together. Today is a special day. The Patterson School of Architecture was officially opened today. This is a nonprofit educational institution that I established with a portion of my income, specializing in architectural education for talented but under-resourced young people. The college is located in what was once the Thorn Building. Yes, I bought the building and completely remodeled it. Buildings that once symbolized greed and corruption are now cradles that nurture dreams. Ready? Maya asked if she would be conducting her first class today as a guest lecturer. Sure. I straightened my tie. The unveiling ceremony was simple and solemn. The mayor himself attended, along with many of his fellow architects. But what touched me most was the arrival of Helen Patterson. Robert would be proud of that. She held my hand with tears in her eyes. Thank you, Julian. Thank you for not forgetting him. He is my teacher, I said, and everything I do is a continuation of his teachings. After the ceremony, I went alone to the top floor, once Marcus's office, now the library of the academy. The view out the floor-to-ceiling windows hadn't changed, but everything was different. I took out my cell phone and looked through the photos of the year, the completion of the London project, the group photo of the Tokyo team, the letter of thanks from the mayor of Dubai. Mr. Vance. A voice interrupted my thoughts. I turned around and saw a young girl, probably in her early 20s, holding a portfolio. I'm Emma Rodriguez, she said a little nervously. I applied for the first session of the academy. Here's my work, albeit rough. I took the portfolio and pored over it. It is indeed rough, but has potential. She has an interesting design concept that focuses on housing in low-income neighborhoods. Why did you choose architecture? I asked. Because I believe good design can change people's lives. She said seriously, I'm from the East End ghetto. I've seen how too many bad buildings can destroy a neighborhood. I want to change all that. I looked at her as if I were seeing my younger self. Welcome to Patterson College. I handed her back her portfolio. Remember, architecture is more than just steel and concrete. It's a vessel for dreams. She left with an excited thank you. I knew that she would make a fine architect. In this academy, it will produce more of her. In the afternoon, Leo came to visit the college. As technical director at Acheron, he is now responsible for the cybersecurity consulting practice. We remained cooperative, but both chose the brighter path. I hear Amelia's getting married. He mentioned it casually. Oh, I was a little surprised. The subject was a colleague in her accounting firm. An ordinary accountant, divorced, with a daughter. Leo pulled up a picture. Looks like an honest man. The photo shows Amelia smiling genuinely, without the pride and indifference she once had. She looks. Happiness. Good luck to her. I said sincerely. Everyone deserves a second chance, including Amelia. I went to Volunteer Park alone in the evening. This is a place I come to often to think. The sun was setting and the whole city was enveloped in a golden glow. In the distance, the glass curtain wall of the Skyline project reflects the light of the setting sun, like a huge lighthouse. My cell phone rings, and it's Maya. Still in the park? She asked. How do you know? Because I know you. She laughed. What do you want for dinner? I'm at Whole Foods. Whatever you decide. Seafood spaghetti then. Remember to buy a nice bottle of wine. Hanging up the phone, I couldn't help but smile. Life, as it turns out, can be so simple and beautiful. On the way home, I passed the lake house I once shared with Amelia. The new owners are watering the garden and the kids are running around on the lawn. That house is finally as warm as it should be. I didn't stop and kept going. Let bygones be bygones. What matters is the present and the future. That night, Maya and I had dinner on the terrace. Candlelight flickering, sea breeze. Thinking about what? She asked. Thinking about a year ago today. I raised my glass. Back then, I would never have imagined this day. That's the way life is, she clinked glasses with me. When you think you've lost everything, it's really the beginning of a new life. Spoken like a philosopher. I'm a senior at Harvard, she said proudly. We all laughed. Late at night, I was in my study sketching a new project. This is a school designed for an impoverished area in Africa and is completely pro bono. Maya leaned over to me and offered the occasional suggestion. An atrium could be added here to increase natural light. Limited budget. I reminded her. Then use local materials. I've researched it, and they have great red clay there that can be made into eco-friendly bricks. I revised the design, and she continued to come up with ideas. This is my life now. No intrigue, no betrayal, just pure creation and sharing. At 2 a.m., the first draft of the design was completed. Go to sleep. Maya yawned. Go ahead, and I'll check again. She kissed me on the forehead and left the den. When I'm alone, I open the drawer and pull out the picture with Professor Patterson. Teacher, I whispered, I did it. Not revenge, but legacy. Your ideas will be passed on to more people through the academy. I put the photo back and closed the drawer. Outside the window, the city was asleep, with only a smattering of lights still flickering. The events of this year sometimes seem like a dream when I think about them. From the betrayal of that birthday night, to the collapse of Thorne's empire, to his new life now. Every step is full of drama, but it's also all a foregone conclusion. Marcus Thorne is now serving a sentence in state prison. According to Leo's sources, he's not doing well in there. Some of the relatives of those victimized by the Thorne Group's shoddy work are in the same prison. Although the prison guards will protect his basic safety, mental torture is unavoidable. Every day, he faces hostility and ridicule from other inmates. What was once a business emperor is now nothing more than prisoner number 47821. He applied for several parole hearings, but was denied each time. The judge's reasoning was simple. He never really confessed and showed no remorse. Carter Wells' situation is even more tragic. A brain injury left him without most of his cognitive abilities, and he now lives in a state rehabilitation center. His mother came from Michigan to take care of him, a 70-year-old man who pushed her wheelchair-bound son around the garden every day. I passed by there once and saw them from a distance. Carter sits in a wheelchair, his eyes glazed over, drooling from the corners of his mouth. His mother was wiping his face, her movements gentle and sad. The once spirited, calculating man now can't even remember his own name. That's the price of greed. As for Amelia, she's really rebuilding her life. She was said to be in a stable relationship with the accountant, and the other man's daughter accepted her. She still lives in a cheap apartment and drives a used car, but the smile on her face is real. Sometimes I wonder what she would be like now if she had chosen a different path. But there are no ifs in history, and everyone is responsible for their own choices. The next morning, I was awakened by a phone call. It's a London client. Julian, sorry to bother you so early. The other man was apologetic, but we've run into a technical difficulty and need your opinion. I looked at the time, 5 in the morning. Counting the time difference, it's 1 p.m. in London. I'm listening. I sat up and Maya rolled over next to me and went back to sleep. The next half hour was spent discussing issues regarding structural strength and material selection. That's the challenge with international programs. You have to be ready to work at all times. After hanging up, I was fully awake. Solly got up and went to the kitchen to make a cup of coffee. Early mornings on Mercer Island are extraordinarily peaceful, with only the call of seabirds and the sound of waves in the distance. I walked to my study with my coffee and turned on my computer to check my email. One caught my eye, from Helen Patterson. Dear Julian, I hope all is well when this letter finds you. I was so moved by yesterday's unveiling that I couldn't sleep all night. Seeing Robert's name honored in such a way, and seeing those hopeful young faces, I know his spirit will live on forever. When I was sorting through Robert's belongings, I found some of his design manuscripts and notes. One of those projects was something he had always wanted to do but hadn't been able to complete, a temporary shelter for Seattle's homeless. I would like to send this information to you. Maybe you can help him fulfill this wish. Also, I've decided to move in with my daughter. There are so many memories of Seattle, it's time to start a new life. Before I leave, I want to thank you again. Not only did you get justice for Robert, but more importantly, you became the kind of person he wanted you to be. Eternally grateful. Helen. I looked at the email and my eyes got a little moist. Professor Patterson's dying wish, I will fulfill it. Starting work this early? Maya walked into the study, draped in her morning robe, her hair still a little messy. Look at this. I forwarded the email to her to read. After she finished reading, she came over and hugged me from behind. You'll get it done, just like you get everything else done. This time is different, I said. This time I want to involve the students of the college. Let them know that architecture is not only for the rich. That's better. She kissed my cheek. Now, will you have breakfast with me? Mr. Workaholic. I smiled and closed the computer, following her towards the kitchen. Life is like that, made up of countless ordinary moments. But it is these moments that make up the essence of happiness. In the morning, I went to Patterson College to share Helen's email with the first period students. This will be your first practicum program, I told them. Not for a grade, not for a portfolio, but for those in need. Excitement sparkled in the students' eyes. Emma Rodriguez was the first to raise her hand. When do we start? Now. I turned on the projection and showed Professor Patterson's manuscript. First, we need field research. Understanding the real needs of the homeless. Remember, good design comes from a deep understanding of the user. Over the next few weeks, students worked in groups to conduct research. They visited shelters, interviewed social workers, and even talked to homeless people on the streets. During the weekly seminars, they share their findings and reflections. They need more than just shelter, said one student. They need dignity and privacy. And security, another added. Many people are reluctant to go to shelters because they are worried about having their belongings stolen. Storage space is important, says Emma, and their entire belongings may be what a shopping cart can hold. I listened quietly, occasionally asking leading questions. Watching these young people thinking and discussing seriously, I felt as if I had seen the scene when Professor Patterson was teaching me. A month later, the design took initial shape. It was a modular system that could be quickly erected and dismantled, with each unit having its own space and storage facilities. What's special about it is that instead of being cold and institutionalized like traditional shelters, it feels as much like home as possible. What about the cost? I asked. We've calculated, Emma said, showing the budget sheet, that using recycled materials and volunteer labor, we can keep the cost of each unit under $500. Very good. What's next? Finding sponsorship and a place to build. Then do it. Remember, a true architect is not just a drawer of plans, but a realizer of dreams. Surprisingly, the program was quickly responded to. Several local businesses were willing to provide materials, and the city approved a vacant lot as a pilot. The media coverage brought in even more volunteers. 3 months later, the first shelter unit was built. The day of the unveiling, the weather was perfect. Students watched their work go from drawings to reality with a sense of pride and accomplishment on their faces. Among the first occupants was a Vietnam veteran who took Emma's hand with tears in his eyes. Thank you. This is the first time in 3 years that I've had a space that is truly my own. I stood by and watched it all. That's what architecture is all about, improving people's lives, giving hope and dignity. Helen Patterson came along and was in tears as she looked at Robert's photos and design manuscripts on the display boards. He must have been so relieved that his dream had finally come true. At the evening celebration, students excitedly discussed their next steps. They want to build more units and even expand to other cities. Take your time. I remind them, Rome wasn't built in a day. The important thing is persistence and continuous improvement. Leo came to the celebration as well. He gave me the news that the liquidation of the Thorn Group's assets was finally over. All victims were compensated, and the remaining assets created a fund dedicated to helping small businesses that had been victimized by unscrupulous businesses. Justice is late, but never absent, he said. I nodded. Everything that has happened in the past year or so has proved one thing. Evil deeds are always rewarded, and goodness is always rewarded. It's just that sometimes the process needs to be actively driven by us. Late at night, after the celebration, I was alone on the rooftop of the college. The lights of the city are still bright, but my mood is completely different than it was a year ago. Then I was filled with anger and a desire for revenge. Now I just want to build and create. The phone rang with a message. When I opened it, it was from Amelia. Saw the news about the shelter program. Professor Robert would be proud. Proud of you too. P.S. I'm getting married next month and would like to invite you and Maya if you don't mind. I know this may be a strange request, but I want a real fresh start, and that requires reconciliation with the past. If you guys can't make it, I totally understand. Just wanted to let you know that I'm really changing. Amelia. I looked at the message and thought about it for a long time. Finally, I replied with 4 words, good luck. As for whether or not to attend the wedding, I need to talk to Maya. But whatever the decision, I truly hope she finds her own happiness. Everyone deserves a second chance. At 1 a.m., I got home. Maya was already asleep, and the moonlight poured through the window on her face, peaceful and beautiful. I lay down gently beside her, and she leaned over in a daze. What's keeping you up so late? Thinking about things. What is it? Thinking about the future. What's there to think of in the future? She said, closing her eyes. Isn't the future tomorrow, and the day after that, and every day after that? I laughed. You're right. I'm always right, she said triumphantly, then fell back asleep. I looked at the ceiling, thinking. On that birthday night a year ago, I lost a lot. My wife, my job, the life I once had. But looking back now, those losses were never meant to be mine. They are built on lies and falsehoods, and sooner or later, they will crumble. And what I have now, career, love, friendships, ideals, are real, tested, and cherished. Most importantly, I got myself back. Not the Julian who wore a mask to fit in with the Thorne family, but the real me, a principled, idealistic, and capable architect. Outside the window, meteors streaked across the night sky. I closed my eyes and didn't make a wish, because I already have everything I want. 2 weeks later, an unexpected visitor arrived at my office. I'm Daniel Morrison. The visitor introduced himself, from the Seattle office of the FBI. I recognized him as the agent in charge of the Marcus case. Anything? I asked him to sit down. I came to thank you in person, he said. Without the evidence you provided, the Patterson case would never have seen the light of day. I just did what needed to be done. It wasn't just the Patterson case, Morrison continued. Your evidence helped us uncover an entire network of corruption. 12 officials and businessmen have been indicted. Seattle's business climate is cleaner as a result. He paused. I know who you really are, Mr. Vance. Your past, your abilities. The FBI would like to know if you would be interested in becoming our counselor. I shook my head. Thanks, but I just want to be an architect now. I understand. He stood up. But if you change your mind, here's my card. This community is lucky to have people like you on the side of justice. After he left, I put my business card away in a drawer. It may be used someday, but not now. Right now, I just want to focus on building, not destroying. In the afternoon, Maya brought good news. Remember that UN project we bid on last month? She said excitedly. We won the bid. It was a sustainable housing project designed for refugee camps in Africa. If successful, it will improve living conditions for tens of thousands of people. Great. I picked her up and spun her around. This is our first international humanitarian project. We need to put together a team, she began to plan, and take field trips to learn about the local climate and culture. Getting the best students from Patterson College involved, I offered, is the perfect learning opportunity. The following days were busy preparing for this project. The team has expanded and the office is full of energy and creativity. Every day brings new challenges, but also new breakthroughs. A month later, we set sail for Africa. On the plane, I looked through the program materials. Maya fell asleep on my shoulder. She's been so tired lately. I gently covered her with a blanket. Through the porthole, I saw the outline of the earth. Somewhere, waiting to be changed. Some people's lives will be better because of our design. This is the life I want. There was an unread message on his cell phone from Amelia with pictures of his wedding. She was wearing a simple white gown and smiling brightly. The man next to him looked ordinary but sincere. Thank you for the blessing. New life is good. I hope all is well with you too. I replied with a smiling emoji and turned off my phone. The past is really past. Now it's time for a new challenge. The plane began to descend, and the continent of Africa unfolded before our eyes. There are countless stories waiting to be written and countless dreams waiting to be realized in that ancient land. And I, Julian Vance, a man who has fallen into the abyss and risen again, will spend the rest of my life building hope. That's my story. Not a story of revenge, but of rebirth. It's when you lose everything that you realize what's really important. It is when you let go of hate that you can embrace true freedom. As with architecture, so with life. That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.